seemed perfect. Young, rich, devout. John and Nikki Hilrich met in college, a match made in heaven. But when desire clashes with faith and secret lives unfold behind closed doors, their perfect world wrapped into betrayal, obsession, and danger. Hi, I'm Holly Mae Cormier, author of Memphis, a domestic thriller about love, survival, and violence. And I'm so happy to share with you guys that this is now available in print edition. Check it out. Amazing, amazing. You can get this print copy on Amazon now, or if you prefer electronic ebooks, you are welcome to get that anywhere that you buy your ebooks from. On this channel, I talk about true crime, narcissistic abuse, and survival stories that relate to fiction. And I post new videos every Tuesday. Okay, so let's get into it. An ambitious young businessman wants it all: success, love, and the perfect life. But for John and Nikki Hilrich, a seemingly perfect couple, temptation and faith collide in dangerous ways. She made John feel like the hottest guy in the room, confident, alive, wanted. But behind that spark were deeper desires. Neither of them could escape. And poor Nikki, what she was surrounded by and what she became, it's clear this match made in heaven was headed for nothing good for either of them. So it all began at California Baptist University. This is where John and Nikki Hilrich met each other. California Baptist University, a school known for its strong Christian values. And for 19-year-old John, faith was everything. He was raised on morals, loyalty, and hard work. John was the kind of guy who didn't party, he didn't drink, he never got into any sort of trouble, but religion wasn't his only focus, because that's where he met fellow student Nikki Wilshire. They both went to the same school and they were colleagues at the local YMCA. Now, John was instantly drawn to Nikki. He felt different, like he could be someone around her, right? And who wouldn't fall for a guy like John? John was the full package. He was tall, he was handsome, he was sharp. He had charm, ambition, and a calm confidence that just drew people in when they met him. And before long, that young love blossomed. Nikki became John's first serious relationship, and he was thrilled to have someone to share his world with. So they spent nearly every moment together, working, studying, and dreaming. Nikki was studying to become a nurse, and John was working towards his business degree at the college that they both went to. Both wanted stable careers, a family, and a future that looked picture perfect. Not long after they met, the two married. Friends described them as happy newlyweds, full of plans and full of potential. John soon landed a job advertising sales, thanks in part to Nikki's stepfather, who helped him get a coveted entry-level position at his own company. So this job, it was tough to break into, and I know personally because I come from the advertising sales world. But John thrived immediately in his new role. From day one, he was determined. He had a plan to climb the ladder, to lead, and to become CEO one day. And John wasn't a leader just because of his title. He genuinely cared about people. His drive and his charisma made him stand out, and his heart, at least in the beginning, was in the right place. So his rise to the top was helped by Nikki, who kept the home fires burning while also working long hours as a nurse. Nikki was a caretaker by nature, the kind of woman who held everything together. They seemed like the perfect pair. She cared for their home and he provided for their future. And John, romantic. He often brought her flowers just to show his appreciation. But as his career took off, his time at home began to grow shorter. Business trips became routine and Nikki grew more resentful. She confided in friends that she was frustrated by how often he was gone and how many of their friends were already settling down with kids while she was just left waiting. Eventually, things changed. Nikki became pregnant with their first child, and everything in their world shifted. In 1999, their daughter, Sarah, was born. Nikki decided to step away from nursing and become a mom full-time to their daughter, hoping that John would slow down himself and spend more time at home with her and their new baby. But his career only grew busier. While John thrived at work, Nikki found herself with the baby most days, juggling everything, exhausted and quietly struggling, raising a child largely on her own while her husband chased success, left her feeling isolated. And it's easy to see how resentment might have started to grow. So naturally, over time, Nikki began to wear down. The long days, the loneliness, it all began to take its toll. Maybe she didn't always speak up about how she was feeling, but silence can be just as loud. And a lot of men, like John, who are ambitious, see long working hours as a way to provide for their family, of showing their love. They believe that success, stability, and financial security are the best gifts that they can give to their loved ones. And that can work if both parents are on the same page. But when one partner starts to feel like all of the success and money doesn't make up for their absences, that what they really need is time, connection, and presence, that's when things start to shift and take a darker form. Misunderstandings grow into resentment. Resentment turns into conflict. By 2001, John's hard work had paid off. The couple purchased their dream home in Yakupa, California, a symbol of everything they had worked for. But sometimes the dream house is where the distance between two people finally becomes impossible to ignore. Their new home in Yakupa felt like a dream, quiet, laid back, surrounded by rolling hills and open skies. It was a big change from the busier city life they'd known growing up. For a while, everything seemed perfect. John's career continued to thrive. Now, his job came with business trips, lots of parties, and company functions, the kind of events where appearances mattered. But Nikki rarely attended his work events. Now, their friends and family never really understood why Nikki stayed home and didn't want to attend these work functions with John, or maybe it was something deeper, maybe a growing disconnect that she didn't know how to fully express. John, meanwhile, was frustrated. He wanted his wife by his side. All the dinners, the award ceremonies, the parties, where he was being recognized for his success. He wanted her there with him. He'd worked hard to climb the ladder and he wanted her there to share in that spotlight, but she just never showed. And in those circles, high achieving, image driven, often filled with temptation, it didn't take long before other women began to notice the handsome, successful man who always seemed to show up alone. John's success at work didn't go unnoticed, especially by the women in the office. He was confident, good looking, and charming in that effortless way that draws people in. Women seemed to gravitate toward him, and John didn't exactly discourage the attention. One woman in particular stood out, Denise Lopez. She was 12 years older than John, divorced with children of her own, and a well-established businesswoman. Denise had a big personality. She was outgoing, flirtatious, highly successful, was loud when she walked into a room. People noticed her. She was friendly with everyone, including John. The two connected quickly. They shared professional goals, long hours at work, and soon, more than a few private conversations. Whether it started as a harmless office banter or something deeper, there was chemistry there and people noticed. So around that same time, in 2002, John and Nikki welcomed their second child, this time a baby boy named Mark. But with a new baby comes new challenges. Family members began to notice tension between the couple. Nikki seemed more tired, more withdrawn. John, on the other hand, seemed restless. He reportedly made comments to a few of his friends, such as, "When your wife got pregnant and had your baby, how long did it take her to lose the baby weight?" Yeah, a small remark maybe, but it revealed something deep, a growing dissatisfaction, and perhaps the start of John looking outside of their marriage for external validation. John's comment about Nikki's Nikki's weight was just the tip of the iceberg. The moment that hinted at what was coming. Beneath the surface, their marriage was about to crack. John was torn, struggling to be the godly husband that his faith demanded of him, while battling a growing attraction to his co-worker, Denise. His religion told him to resist temptation, but temptation was everywhere. With Nikki home with the kids and skipping his work events, John and Denise spent more and more time together. Business trips, late nights, parties. The line between professional and personal blurred until it disappeared entirely. Now, at first, their relationship was quiet, secretive. But for Denise, it wasn't just an affair. For her, it was something real. And it's unclear whether John even told her that he was still married. Some say he hinted at being separated from Nikki, and this just shows that honesty wasn't one of John's strong points. He's deceiving his wife and his mistress. It seemed like John wanted both worlds, a loving wife at home with the children, and his mistress is the woman who made him feel alive and admired. But divorce wasn't an option. To John, divorce meant failure, and failure wasn't something that he would accept. In every way, Denise and Nikki were opposites. Denise was bold, successful, and extrovert. Nikki was a homebody. She was a caretaker for her children, for her husband, for the home. It's easy to see how the contrast might have drawn John in even deeper. Just when John's life couldn't seem to get any easier, work presented him with a little opportunity, a promotion that would move him to Oxnard, California, 3 hours away from their current home in San Bernardino, California. For a man already living 2 separate lives, that distance could be exactly what he needed to keep his secrets hidden. So Nikki was done moving. She told him flat out, "I'm not uprooting the kids." It would have been their 4th family move over the last 3 years. Her family was nearby, her church was there, and she didn't want to uproot the kids again. So she drew a line in the sand. She told him, "No, if that job means so much to you, then you're gonna have to do the move without me and the kids." John agreed. He took the promotion and moved to Oxnard, California on his own, traveling home on the weekends to see Nikki and their kids. But 5 days apart every week between Nikki and John, it only grew the distance that was already lurking in their relationship for years. But for John, that distance also meant freedom to live the double life that he has been hiding. Now, at this point, his affair with Denise goes into overdrive. She was sultry, confident, made John feel alive. He felt alive around Denise, his mistress, desired in a way that he no longer felt like at home. But that kind of life comes with chaos. Now, at this point, John was living in utter turmoil. He was torn between his wife at home, who he vowed to God to be faithful and stay with till death do us part, and the one that he called his soulmate, Denise, the mistress. He loved Denise deep down, but he made vows to Nikki, and he is a devout Christian, and he couldn't just walk away. Meanwhile, Nikki's instincts were telling her that something wasn't right. John started making excuses for why he couldn't come home, claiming work emergencies, car trouble, or last-minute obligations. Calls went unanswered, and weekends came and went without visits from John to Nikki and their children. Desperate for answers, Nikki turns to her parents, who decided it would be in the best interest of all in the family for them to hire a private investigator. And before long, they had proof. John wasn't working late. He was seeing another woman. When Nikki's parents broke the news to her, she was devastated. This was the man that she thought she would spend her life with, raise her children with. But even then, she wasn't ready to give up. She wanted to fight for her family. Then, out of nowhere, John called a friend, panicked. He said, "I think I'm being followed." Took his pickup truck to a local mechanic, looked underbody of the vehicle, and sure enough, they found a tracking device on his vehicle. They found a GPS tracker attached to the bottom of his vehicle. Now, when John found the tracking device, he exploded, okay? He confronted Nikki, furious, told her it was over. He knew that she was the one who put on the tracking device. And it was kind of ironic. Like, he was the one who is in the wrong here. He cheated, but Nikki was in the wrong for putting a GPS tracker on his vehicle to get some answers. It wasn't the affair that ended the marriage, it was the betrayal of her putting a tracker. So this behavior, I mean, it was almost like he was wearing armor. The armor that he was wearing finally cracked and people could see what was underneath. The illusion was gone. The facade was broken. John had built his life on control over his image, his marriage, his future. And now that control was slipping away. So some believe that when John found that tracker that Nikki had placed under his vehicle, she didn't just expose his secret, she disrupted his timeline. John wanted to be the one to decide how and when their marriage ended, not her. When people create an image for themselves, they often start to believe it, and John truly saw himself as a good man, a loyal husband, a loving father who had simply fallen in love with someone else. In his mind, he was still the hero of his story. So, when Nikki confronted him with the truth, he flipped the script. Suddenly, he was the one betrayed by his wife, who, in his warped reasoning, had violated his trust by tracking him. It's a twisted kind of logic, but for John, it made sense for his narrative. Soon after, the couple separated. They agreed to co-parent. Nikki stayed in the family home with their children, and John moved in with Denise. What had once been whispers was now official. John's double life was out in the open. He made sure his family was taken care of financially. Nikki and the children never went without, but money couldn't replace what Nikki had lost. She wasn't looking for a payout. She wanted her partner back, her children's father, the life that they had built together, and now that life was gone. After the separation, Nikki began calling Denise, the other woman. She wanted her to know the truth, that John and Nikki weren't divorced. Now, for Denise, this was news. She had believed John's story that his marriage was over, but he was free to move on, but the truth was even messier. John hadn't finalized the divorce because he was caught between two worlds. Part of him wanted to keep his family together, and part of him couldn't give up the thrill and the validation that he found with Denise. But in the meantime, he refused to give Nikki a clean break. Friends recall asking him, "Are you sure you're not leading her on? Do you think that you're going to be going back?" John worried he might lose custody of his kids, so he kept saying things ambiguous. He said just enough to pacify Nikki, to keep the peace, to keep her calm, but never enough to truly let her go. It was wrong, but it worked. And every time he came around, a small part of Nikki still believed they might find their way back to each other. But that hope didn't last. After 3 years apart, John made it official in the cruelest way possible. In 2010, he and Denise bought a home together in Fontana, California, almost perfectly positioned halfway between Nikki's house, where his children lived, and his office. It was no secret anymore. John had moved on publicly and permanently. He had a new life, a new home, and a new woman, less than an hour away from the woman he'd left behind. Now, for Nikki, it was like tearing open an old wound. Friends said after that, something in her started to change. The heartache formed into something else, something darker. 10 years of marriage, 4 years apart, two people trying to build separate lives. But for Nikki Hilrich, separation wasn't closure. It was the beginning of the end. By 2011, John was living with his lover less than an hour from Nikki, who was trying to rebuild her life. She threw herself into her job at a nursing home, eager to make new friends and explore a world beyond her marriage. At work, two young men, David, who was 21, and Emilio, 23 years old, took notice of her. Nikki was nearly 40 at the time, and they were her subordinates in the kitchen. Flirtation began almost immediately. They made her feel noticed, attractive, and alive in ways that she hadn't felt with her husband in years. Remember, her husband was just rejecting her, denying her, leaving her. So she's got like these 2 kids essentially, compared to a 40-year-old. I mean, they're half her age, giving her attention. It's gotta be weird. I don't know. So, intrigued by this new world, Nikki invites David and Emilio over to her home. She starts drinking with them at her house, cooking them food. She baked them cheesecake. But what started as a casual flirtation quickly became a sexual relationship, sometimes involving both of the men. Little glass break. So her friends started to notice a change in her. She was no longer the quiet, devoted mom that she once was. She had become someone else entirely. So I want to just have a little note in here that rejection can change people psychologically and make them act in ways that they normally wouldn't behave, in ways that are self-destructive from dangerous or inappropriate sources. And this is kind of what appears to have happened to Nikki. So she got rejected by her husband, and rejection can make people act in like weird ways, okay? Because rejection can make you start to self-sabotage. You can try to seek external validation and attention-seeking behavior stemming from the rejection. She had been deeply rejected by her husband, John, and she was trying to reclaim control of her life. Nikki's actions were rebellious, yes, an attempt to assert her independence and explore her desires, but they were also symptomatic of the trauma and the heartbreak that she had endured. She was no longer the woman John had married, and he could not tolerate it. At the same time, John's own life was taking a turn for the worse. So by 2011, his company underwent a restructuring and he was demoted. His career, once his Midas touch, faltered, adding to the turmoil already consuming his personal life. Then in May 2011, Nikki's daughter made a discovery that would shock John: a gun in her mother's bedroom. So of course, John confronted Nikki. He was furious that their young daughter found an unsecured weapon in the home. And Nikki's response was calm but firm. It was simply for protection, and she had a right to own a gun. I mean, it is the United States of America. You can own a gun. But by June 2011, John's concern for his children's safety had reached a fever pitch. He suspected Nikki's new friends might be a bad influence on her. Yeah, you'd think? And a quick search confirmed his suspicions in a matter of minutes. David Oliveira, who is one of Nikki's new young male companion friends, had a criminal past, a prior conviction for unlawful sexual activity with an underage girl. Now, John's stomach turned upon discovering this information online about a man who has been at his home where his underage daughter is in the same vicinity of this predator, okay? I can understand, like, the thought was terrifying to him, have this man around his daughter. What would you do if you discovered your ex-wife was hanging around with child predators? You'd be furious. And for John, this marked a turning point in their relationship. Nikki Hilrich had gone from church-going housewife to associating with dangerous men. John, protective and desperate, was ready to do whatever it took to keep his kids safe. In June 2011, John and Nikki signed a parenting agreement. David was not allowed around the children. If he was seen again, Nikki would risk losing custody of their 2 kids. But Nikki couldn't resist. Just 2 months later, she met up with David again. Their daughter, Sarah, reported it to John, and he was done. Like, done. He could not believe Nikki brought this guy in the house again around their children. He had tried to protect his children, to set clear boundaries, and Nikki broke those boundaries. Frankly, it didn't surprise anyone that she didn't stick to the agreement. What shocked people was that she had gone that long without breaking the agreement. Nikki seemed to be on a self-destructive path, a mission to sabotage her life, throw away stability, and risk everything she had left. Psychologists note the kind of behavior often comes from short-term thinking, instant gratification, impulsive choices, and a lack of regard for the long-term consequences. And that's exactly what Nikki was doing. And it was about to set the stage for something even more dangerous. So at this point, John's frustration is reaching a breaking point, okay? All he has ever done is try to have stability and prosperity for his family. And every step of the way, Nikki, who is a woman scorned, okay, is just self-sabotaging and refusing to agree to any sort of parenting agreement with the man who jilted her. That's what's going on here. Now, Nikki's reckless behavior threatens everything that he values in life. Furious, John demanded to see Nikki. He told her bluntly if his children continued to be around David and Emilio, he would not allow it. He was moving back into their house and wanted her out of the house. He threatened to file for full custody with evidence of her relationships with David and Emilio ready for family court. Nikki was livid. To her, it felt like betrayal all over again. Friends warned John, "You're crazy if you think she's just going to give up those kids and the house." But John's only goal was to protect his children, and he was prepared to do whatever it took. 2 days later, Nikki attempted to reach a common ground with him. They agreed to meet at a therapist's office, but that meeting never happened. On August 16th, 2011, Ontario Police Department received a 911 call, shots fired in a parking structure of a business office complex, an unusual and terrifying place for such violence. Surveillance footage later revealed the horrifying scene. A truck pulled up, a man got out and walked directly toward the victim. Shots rang out. John spun, went to the ground, and then the fatal shot behind his ear. The attack was swift, brutal, and methodical. He never stood a chance. For investigators and witnesses, it was difficult to comprehend. Why would anyone want to kill a businessman like John Hilrich? Investigators quickly noticed something unusual. Nothing was stolen, no robbery, no carjacking, no signs of forced entry. The scene didn't look like a random crime. This was a planned hit. John had been on his way to a therapy session for his children, a seemingly ordinary appointment that ended in violence. The absence of typical robbery or assault evidence began to point in a chilling direction. This was personal. Could it have been someone close to him? A spouse, perhaps? When law enforcement makes notifications of a death, there's an expected response. Shock, devastation, visible despair. But Nikki's reaction was strikingly absent. She didn't collapse. She didn't act flustered. Instead, she remained unnervingly calm, composed, in control, even when asked to meet officers at the hospital. She didn't need directions. She calmly told the officers, "I'm just going to plug the address in my phone. I'll be there. I'm coming to the hospital." Officers immediately wanted to isolate and to question her. Was she hiding something? Did she know more than what she was letting on? It was the beginning of an investigation that would uncover a shocking truth. John and Nikki Hilrich were headed toward a final showdown, a confrontation that would end in bullets, betrayal, and a deadly mystery caught on surveillance footage. Police began questioning everyone connected to John, including his ex-wife. Nikki claimed she was waiting for John at the therapist's office, but he was late. She said she texted him, checking in, and even sent a message to his mother asking if she had heard from him. An eyewitness helped break the case wide open. A man working on the 5th floor of the office building had binoculars at his desk. He heard the gunfire and watched as a truck sped away. Thankfully, he recorded the license plate. Tracing the vehicle led police to a woman who happened to be an ex-lover of David Olivier, one of Nikki's young friends. She admitted she had lent the truck to David and Emilio just hours earlier. That was the break investigators needed. Now, David and Emilio were arrested on their way to Mexico. That's when the full scope of the investigation began to emerge. David's confiscated cell phone revealed damning evidence, texts from Nikki that detailed John's location on the morning of August 16th. One message even included a picture of John's parking spot. Accompanying it, Nikki wrote, "Don't worry, you'll get him next time." The evidence made it clear. John Hilrich's killers had been guided by Nikki Hilrich. Only 5 hours after John was killed, Nikki Hilrich was read her rights and placed under arrest. Her involvement was undeniable. Post-it notes were found in Nikki's own handwriting. I'm going to read what some of these post-it notes said that Nikki had written herself. John Hilrich must die. Thank David for doing it. John Hilrich has to die today. He's ruining my relationship with my children, my finances, my life. I will be a better mother, a better nurse, a better friend, a better daughter, a better Christian after he is gone. Those notes weren't just writings. They were windows into Nikki's mind. This is broadcast an obsessive need to externalize destructive thoughts. It wasn't enough that she was thinking them. She had to get them off of her brain, put them onto paper. Writing them made them real, and the perfect storm was set. John Hilrich would never see another day. Nikki clearly had the capability to harm someone or to enlist others to do it for her. But the tragedy of John Hilrich's death wasn't inevitable. It was a perfect storm. Betrayal, heartbreak, drug use, and a connection with men willing to act out their darkest impulses. Had John not cheated and left the marriage, we might never have seen the extreme sociopathic acts that emerged out of Nikki. Yet his betrayal exposed a capacity within Nikki that may have existed long before she ever met him. The post-it notes sealed her fate, a chilling, cold-blooded window into her mind. The words on the post-it notes were terrifying in their casual cruelty, reflecting a calculated desire to erase him from her life. On July 16, 2015, justice was served. Nikki Hilrich was sentenced to a minimum of 26 years in prison for the first-degree murder of her ex-husband. David Olivieri and Emilio, already with prior convictions, received automatic 50 years to life sentences. For John's loved ones, there is some solace in knowing that even in death, he achieved what he had always fought for, safety for his children. He confronted danger for them, knowing the risk, and ultimately, he died protecting them. John Hilrich was a devoted father. He gave his life to ensure the safety and well-being of his children, and that endures even in the harshest circumstances. I hope this story made you think, reflect, and appreciate those you hold dear. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next Tuesday.